Welcome to Top Stories Hub. Today we've got a new story, a mystery you'll want to unravel. I'd always figured my life was rock steady, a calm and predictable routine, the kind a guy grinds for, secures, and holds close. I'm Michael Bennett, and until the second my world shattered, I was certain I'd forged something authentic, a solid career, a devoted marriage, a loving family, and unshakable stability. Reflecting now, I should have spotted the warning signs, those quiet changes, like how my wife, Sarah, stopped beaming with joy, or how my daughter, Chloe, grew more withdrawn with each passing day. It's wild how your brain tricks you, sweeping aside the truths it's not ready to confront. It convinces you that a teen's moody outbursts are just part of growing up, that your spouse's weariness is merely the grind of daily life, that all's well when, deep down, everything's decaying. For 2 decades, Sarah and I crafted a life side by side. We weren't flawless, but we functioned as a unit. I earned a living as a structural engineer, sketching out buildings folks strolled past daily without a second glance. My work was dependable, sturdy, much like I assumed my marriage to be. Sarah stayed home, once a vibrant woman bursting with warmth, giggles, and an infectious spark that could brighten any space. Over time, though, her laughter dwindled, and I brushed it off as just the weight of years piling up. Chloe, our only kid, was 17, neck deep in that classic teenage apathy, lost in her own universe of buddies, a phone practically fused to her palm, and an attitude that left me wondering where my sweet little girl had vanished. Still, I wasn't too concerned, not truly. She pulled good grades, stayed out of major trouble, or so I thought. If I'd been more observant, I would have caught the red flags earlier, the heavy silences during meals, the knowing glances Sarah and Chloe exchanged when I spoke, like they shared a hidden truth I wasn't privy to, or how Sarah suddenly got cagey with her phone, tilting it away whenever I entered the room. At first, I convinced myself I was overthinking, that I was just being overly suspicious. But after years of marriage, you develop a sixth sense, a nagging intuition that tugs at you, murmuring that something's amiss, that things aren't quite right. Mine was blaring like an alarm. The week before my life imploded felt bizarre. Everything seemed normal on the surface, yet there was this undercurrent of change, like how Sarah's smiles felt strained when I pecked her cheek before heading to work, or how Chloe barely registered my presence. One night sticks out vividly, the final evening I sat at our dining table as a dad, a husband, a man who thought he had a family to call his own. It was just us three, as usual, the house hushed except for the soft clatter of forks on plates. Sarah had whipped up chicken and rice, a dish I usually loved, but that night, it tasted like nothing. Chloe sat across from me, glued to her phone, barely present, her head bowed, fingers flying across the screen. Now and then, she'd let out a little smirk at whatever she was reading. Sarah was at the table's end, her lips curled in an odd, distant smile as she poked at her food. Something felt deeply wrong. I coughed lightly, placing my fork down. "Chloe, how'd school go today?" "Same old," she mumbled, eyes still locked on her screen. I mustered a grin. "Come on, that's not a real answer." She let out a heavy sigh, finally glancing up, her face blank, like talking to me was a burden. "It was okay, Dad. Nothing worth mentioning." I looked to Sarah, hoping she'd nudge Chloe to open up, but she just wore that same cryptic smile. Then she spoke. "You ought to chat more with your dad, Chloe. He tries hard to be here for us." Her tone felt off, mechanical, rehearsed, not the warm encouragement I'd expected, but more like she was reading from a script she didn't buy into. Chloe rolled her eyes. "Ugh, Mom, you always pull this. Just let me be." With that, she shoved her chair back and stomped off. I turned to Sarah. "That wasn't called for. She needs to show some respect." Her eyes met mine at last, but they were cool, detached. I wanted to press her, to demand, "Sarah, what's going on? Why do I feel like a stranger in my own house?" But I held back, exhaling heavily, rubbing my forehead. "It's probably just a phase, right? Sarah didn't respond, just gave a slight nod and turned back to her plate. Something was seriously off, but I tried to convince myself it was no big deal. That night, lying in bed next to my wife, I stared at the ceiling, her slow, even breaths filling the silence, though I knew she wasn't sleeping. My mind replayed the little things, the secrecy, the shared looks between her and Chloe, the strange tension in the air. This wasn't a phase, it was something darker, more sinister. I just hadn't pieced it together yet. Reflection asterisk. If I could go back to that night, I'd grab myself by the shoulders and yell to get out, to grab my things and demand answers before it was too late. But I didn't, because I still trusted them. That trust was about to cost me everything. I never could have fathomed that my own wife and daughter were plotting to wipe me out, not just walk away or betray me, but to fully replace me, like I was nothing but a hurdle in their path. The clues were there, but I was too blind, too wrapped up in my faith in them, too sure that the two people I'd poured my life into would never do something so cruel. But truth doesn't bend to what you believe. Truth is truth, and the reality was, Sarah had her sights set on another man to take my place. The first hint asterisk. It began with small stuff, late night calls Sarah dismissed as missed dials, texts that brought a smile to her face before she hurriedly hid her phone from view. She'd never been secretive like that before. Then came the shifts at home. Out of nowhere, she was redecorating, chatting about new furniture, reshuffling our bedroom, even tossing out my favorite armchair because it was worn out. She started making choices without me, decisions we'd always tackled as a team. I'll never forget coming home one night to find our living room transformed, a new sofa, a sleek coffee table, fresh art on the walls. It was like the home I'd built was being dismantled, piece by piece. What happened to the old couch? I asked, standing in the middle of the room, feeling like an intruder in my own space. Sarah barely glanced up. Sold it. Figured it was time for a fresh look. No heads up, no conversation, just gone. Back then, I thought maybe she was restless, maybe grappling with a midlife shift, craving something new. Now I see it clearly, she was setting the stage for someone else, for him. Chloe's sudden allegiance switch asterisk. My daughter, Chloe, had always been a bit distant as a teen, but we still had our moments, drives just the two of us, silly inside jokes. I was still her dad, the guy who taught her to ride a bike, who checked for monsters under her bed when she was small. But then she started siding with Sarah in every disagreement, even when there was no side to pick. One night at dinner, during our usual strained, quiet routine, Sarah tossed out a casual jab about me not being engaged enough at home. It was a ridiculous claim. I worked hard but was always there, always present. I looked to Chloe, expecting her to brush it off, but instead, she gave me this smug little smirk. Mom's got a point, Dad. You're kinda checked out. I nearly choked on my bite. Checked out? I bust my tail all day to keep this family afloat. What am I not doing? Chloe just shrugged, like my irritation was some kind of joke. Sarah sipped her wine, a faint smile playing on her lips. That's when it hit me, they'd been talking about me, whispering behind my back, painting me as the outsider in my own home. Ethan, the guy meant to take my place asterisk. Then came Ethan. I first heard his name from Chloe, of all people. She was perched at the kitchen counter, chuckling at something on her phone. What's so funny? I asked. She flipped her phone toward me, showing a selfie of her, Sarah, and some guy I'd never laid eyes on. Mom and I bumped into Ethan at the coffee shop, she said, tossing his name out like I was supposed to know him, her tone making my gut twist, like he was already part of their world, and I was the one who didn't fit. I stared at the photo. He was younger than me, in shape, sharply dressed, with that slick, easy charm some guys just ooze, sitting way too close to Sarah. A cold dread settled in my chest. Who's this guy? Sarah didn't miss a beat, flashing a calm smile. Oh, just a friend, that's all. Just a friend. The deception starts to unravel asterisk. The more I heard Ethan's name, the more uneasy I got. Ethan this, Ethan that, Chloe dropped his name too often. Sarah began staying out late, feeding me vague excuses about catching up with an old buddy. I'm not dumb. I started paying closer attention. Sarah stopped wearing her wedding ring when she left the house. She dressed up more, even for no apparent reason. Then came the late-night vanishings. One night, I woke up at 2 a.m. to find Sarah's side of the bed empty. I checked the living room, nothing. The kitchen, empty. Then I noticed the porch light glowing. Peeking through the curtains, I saw her out there, murmuring into her phone. I eased the door open, catching her words. "He's out cold," she whispered. "No, he hasn't got a clue." Something in me broke. Who was she talking to? Why was she so sure I was in the dark? I stepped outside, and she jolted, nearly dropping her phone. "Who's on the phone?" I kept my voice steady, but inside, I was raging. She paused too long. "Just Lisa." A blatant lie. I locked eyes with her, but she wouldn't meet my gaze. I let it slide for the moment, but I knew, this wasn't some casual fling. This was a calculated scheme. The last red flag asterisk. The night before they took me away, Sarah and Chloe were huddled on the couch, whispering. I walked in, and they clammed up. Sarah flashed a fake, tight smile. "Hey, sweetie." Chloe barely glanced my way, and that's when it hit me, the sinking realization that I was an outsider in my own family, the gut punch that something big was coming, though I couldn't name it. The way Sarah's eyes lingered on me that night, it was like she'd already written me off. Reflection asterisk. If I'd walked out that night, would things have turned out differently? Could I have dodged the 17 years of torment, or would they have found another way to erase me? Maybe I was doomed the moment Ethan stepped into their lives. Maybe I was just a stand-in, waiting to be swapped out. The next day, they made sure I was gone. The day it all fell apart asterisk. It began like any other morning. I got up early, brewed my usual dark coffee, and sat at the kitchen table, poring over blueprints for a construction job I'd been tackling for weeks. The house was still, save for the low hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the floorboards settling in the cool morning air. Sarah was still in bed, or so I thought. Chloe's door was shut, as always. Everything seemed normal. If I'd had even a hint of what was coming, I'd have grabbed my keys, walked out, and never looked back. The knock that changed everything asterisk. Around 7 a.m., a sharp, commanding knock jolted me, so forceful it sent a shiver down my spine. I set my coffee down, crossed to the door, and opened it to find two uniformed cops on my porch. One, a tall guy with a rigid stance, spoke first. "Mr. Michael Bennett?" I blinked, thrown off. "Yeah, that's me. We've got a warrant for your arrest." The words slammed into me like a truck. "Arrest?" I let out a shaky chuckle, expecting them to backtrack, to admit it was a mix-up. But they didn't. Instead, they stepped inside, hands already reaching for their handcuffs. What's this about?" I stuttered, my voice faltering. The other officer, a woman with a stony, unreadable face, glanced toward Sarah, who now stood at the base of the stairs. She was fully dressed, arms folded, her expression blank. Beside her was Chloe, tears streaming down her cheeks, refusing to meet my eyes. A sick, twisting dread coiled in my gut. "This is a mistake," I said, raising my hands like that could somehow stop them. The tall officer let out a curt sigh, his tone flat, practiced. "You're under arrest for multiple counts of child abuse and endangering a minor." My heart froze. The blood drained from my face. "What?" I could barely choke out the word. Chloe's sobs grew louder, her voice trembling. "He's been hurting me," she whimpered. "For years, I swear." My vision swam. My mind couldn't grasp it, this wasn't real, it couldn't be. I turned to Sarah, pleading with my eyes for her to end this insanity, but she just stood there, silent, watching. And that's when I knew, this wasn't a mistake. This was their plan. The arrest asterisk. The officers spun me around, yanking my arms back. The icy metal of the handcuffs dug into my skin. Sarah, I choked out, craning my neck to see her. Please, tell them this isn't true. Silence. She just slid an arm around Chloe, drawing her near, murmuring something soft in her ear. Then she spoke, her voice steady, resolute. It's done, Michael. Her tone carried a chilling finality, as if she'd been counting down to this moment for years. I struggled against the cops' hold, but they pushed me forward. Don't fight it, sir, one barked. I couldn't wrap my head around it. My eyes found Chloe one last time. Why, Chloe? My voice broke, raw with desperation. Why are you doing this to me? For a fleeting second, I caught a glimpse of something in her expression, uncertainty, maybe regret, a shadow of guilt. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. She looked away, and that was it. They hauled me out of my house, past neighbors clustered on their lawns, staring like I was some kind of predator, a criminal in their midst. I yelled, I thrashed, I pleaded, but it was useless. Sarah and Chloe had already branded me guilty. The trial that was rigged from the start asterisk. They didn't need proof. Chloe's testimony alone was enough to destroy me, because in cases like this, an accusation carries all the weight. My lawyer, a court-assigned guy who seemed resigned to my doom, pointed out the absence of hard evidence, but Sarah had covered her bases, staged photos, scripted statements, lies polished to perfection. Then there was Chloe on the witness stand, weaving a gut-wrenching tale that felt like a nightmare. He'd sneak into my room at night, she murmured, her voice trembling with rehearsed tears. The courtroom collectively inhaled. He said if I ever told, he'd hurt Mom too. The room gasped again. The judge glared at me like I was evil incarnate. And me? I just sat there, helpless, watching my daughter's falsehoods bury me under their weight. The verdict asterisk. It was over quickly, too quickly. Cases like this don't drag on. The jury returned in under an hour, guilty on every charge. The judge barely glanced my way as he handed down my fate, 17 years. 17 years. In an instant, my life was ripped away. I turned to Sarah, my sight clouded with fury, disbelief, and the sting of betrayal. She wasn't grinning outright, she was too clever for that, but I saw it in her eyes, triumph, a quiet relief. She'd won. She'd cleared the path to replace me. My last moments of freedom asterisk. Before they dragged me off, I stole one final look at Chloe. She wouldn't meet my eyes, tears still streaming down her cheeks, but I knew now they were fake, just part of the act. She'd been manipulated, turned against me, but she'd chosen this path. Because of her, I was headed for 17 years in a cage. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but no words came. What do you say to the people who've shattered your existence? Reflection asterisk. As they marched me away, one thought looped in my head, this can't be real, this isn't happening. But it was. And the worst part wasn't just the betrayal or the lies, it was the replacement. I wasn't just being erased from their lives, I was being swapped out like a faulty part. That realization alone snuffed out any love I still held for them. 17 years. It doesn't sink in at first. The judge's voice was a faint hum in my ears, the words, 17 years in Oak Ridge State Prison, lingering like a death knell, because that's what it felt like. The handcuffs bit into my wrists, cutting into my skin as the officers escorted me from the courtroom. Everything blurred around me, but one thing stood out, Sarah's subtle smile. Not a full-on smirk, she was too cunning for that, but I caught it in her gaze, satisfaction, relief, victory. She'd gotten her wish, me, out of the picture, gone for good. I glanced at Chloe, clinging to a sliver of hope that she'd look at me, that she'd crack, show some shred of regret. But she wouldn't. She stood there, gripping Sarah's hand, tears rolling down her face, crocodile tears. I'd spent 17 years raising her, and in minutes, she'd discarded me like trash. I should have hated her, should have been consumed by rage, a burning resentment that could swallow a man whole. But all I felt was a hollow numbness. Arrival at Oakridge State Prison *. The second I stepped into Oakridge, I knew surviving 17 years was a long shot. The stench hit me first, a sour mix of sweat, urine, and something decayed, heavy in the air. Shouts, clanging metal, and the wails of men already broken echoed around me. A guard shoved me forward. "Keep moving." I obeyed, because that's your only option, you move, or they make you. Processing was a haze, fingerprints, mugshots, humiliating strip searches. Then they handed me the jumpsuit. Inmate 18,792. That's who I was now, not Michael, not Dad, just a number. The code of survival * you learn fast in prison, real rules don't exist. The guards couldn't care less, some were crueler than the inmates. To make it through, you had to adapt quickly, never show vulnerability, avoid lingering eye contact, don't owe anyone a thing, and trust no one, ever. I figured that out on day one, because that first day was the worst of my life. The first assault * I'd barely been in my cell an hour when it went down. The bars clanged shut, and I sensed I wasn't alone. I turned to face 3 of them, big, menacing, eyeing me like fresh prey. Before I could say a word, a fist slammed into my ribs, a searing pain stealing my breath. I staggered, gasping. Another punch caught my jaw, then a third dropped me to the floor. They kept going, kicks, more blows, their laughter ringing in my ears. They were taunting, hurling insults, but I couldn't make out the words. All I heard was Sarah's voice from the trial, "For years, Michael has been abusing our daughter." That sentence looped endlessly. The guards didn't intervene, they never do. I don't know how long it lasted. All I recall is the metallic taste of blood and the cold concrete beneath me. The relentless days and nights * prison reshapes you. For the first few months, I clung to my innocence, telling myself this nightmare would end someday. But days bled into months, months into years, and the world outside moved on without me. No letters, no visitors. Sarah and Chloe never reached out, not once. Why would they? They'd built a new life, complete with a new man. I was just a ghost, a blemish they'd scrubbed away. And slowly, I began to change. The first time I fought back, they threw me in solitary for a week, 7 days in a suffocating, pitch-black void, nothing but my own breath and the throbbing in my skull. That's when it hit me, there's a gap between living and merely existing. I wasn't living anymore. I was just scraping by. The moment I let go * there was one pivotal moment that transformed me. It was year 5. By then, I'd earned a reputation, I wasn't the defenseless guy who got ambushed on day 1. I bore scars, a nose that never set right, a gash above my eye from a brawl in the yard. Pain didn't register anymore. That's what happens when you endure too long, you go numb. That day, I was eating alone in the mess hall when a rookie made a mistake. He sat at my table, unaware of the unspoken rules. I looked up. He was young, too young, fresh meat, probably terrified. "Get up," I said. He faltered. "I didn't know, man, I cut him off, grabbing his collar and smashing his head against the table. Gasps and chuckles erupted around me. The kid slumped back, dazed, blood trickling from his nose. I felt nothing, no guilt, no sorrow, nothing. That's when I realized, the old me was gone. The man Sarah and Chloe obliterated no longer existed. They weren't my family anymore. They were nothing to me. The sudden freedom * by year 17, I'd made peace with my fate, I wasn't getting out. Then one day, a guard showed up at my cell, looking irritated. "Grab your things." I stared, confused. "What?" "You're being released." I didn't budge. It felt like a cruel prank, some twisted game. But it was real. Chloe had retracted her statement. After 17 years, she'd decided to come clean. But it was too late, I was already a shell of who I'd been. When they swung open the prison gate, when I saw the sky again, I didn't feel joy or relief. I felt nothing. The man who'd entered Oakridge all those years ago was dead. And the two people waiting outside, Sarah and Chloe, weeping, pleading for forgiveness, they were strangers to me now. Reflection * 17 years. 17 years of torment, agony, and betrayal. And now they wanted me to come back, to forgive, to act like it never happened. But I wasn't the man they remembered, and I had no intention of returning to them. I always thought walking out of prison would feel like a triumph, like the moment everything would click back into place, when I could finally breathe without the stench of betrayal choking me. But when it happened, it was empty. 17 years. 17 years of being treated like a beast, a villain, for a crime I never committed. 17 years of rage, of clawing to survive when I should have been broken. And now, out of nowhere, I was free. But free for what? The release * when the guards told me to pack up, I didn't buy it at first. Hope had died in me long ago. I'd accepted I'd rot in that prison, just another name on a list, another man the world forgot. But as they led me down the long corridor to the exit, it sank in, this was happening. The gates parted, and sunlight hit me like a punch. I flinched. After years of gray walls and harsh fluorescence, the outside world felt too vast, too glaring, too exposed. I took a step, then saw them, Sarah and Chloe, standing there, waiting. The women who'd ruined me. Sarah looked older, naturally, but not worn down. No, she still had that polished, put-together vibe, as if life had been kind, as if she hadn't slept peacefully for 17 years while I languished in a cell. Chloe, now more woman than the teen I last saw in court, had a pale face streaked with tears, her hands trembling. She moved first, stepping toward me, her voice breaking. "Dad." I raised a hand, stopping her cold. I didn't want to hear it, her hollow apology meant nothing. "Please," Chloe sobbed, guilt heavy in her voice. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry." I stayed silent. She pressed on, hands clasped like she was begging for salvation. I didn't understand. "Mom convinced me, you've got to believe I didn't mean it." I let out a harsh, bitter chuckle, unfamiliar even to me. "Didn't understand," I echoed, my tone low but cutting. "Didn't understand what, Chloe? That you sent me to prison for 17 years? That you stood in that courtroom, lying, while I begged you to tell the truth?" She recoiled. Sarah finally spoke, her voice calm, practiced. "Michael, please. We messed up. We didn't see things clearly." I turned to her, my chest tight with something dark, too big to hold in. "Messed up," I repeated. "Messed up." That's what she called it, like she'd forgotten a grocery run, not obliterated my entire life. The fury I'd buried roared to life, and I stepped closer, fists balled. "You stole everything," I hissed. "Your lies let me rot while you built a new life, while you—" I stopped myself, trembling with anger. I wanted to scream, to make them feel the pain they'd inflicted. But I couldn't, no matter how much I craved it, nothing could undo those years. Then Sarah did what I should have seen coming. She reached out, as if I'd fall into her arms like nothing had happened. I jerked back, fast, like dodging a blow. "Don't you dare," I snapped. Chloe's collapse * Chloe dropped to her knees in the parking lot, sobbing, struggling to breathe. "Please," she pleaded. "I just want my dad back." I was dumb, I was young, I didn't. I faced her, jaw clenched. "You didn't care," I said flatly. "That's what you didn't do. You watched them drag me away, and now, when it suits you, when you want your dad back, you decide to feel bad." Her sobs grew louder. I should have felt something, sympathy, maybe sorrow, but there was nothing left for her. She wasn't my daughter anymore. She made that choice when she labeled me a monster for the world to judge, and now she had to live with it. The final farewell. Sarah stepped forward, desperation in her voice. We can make this right, Michael. Come home, please. I laughed again, that same cold, hollow sound. Home. I echoed. I don't have a home. You made sure of that, didn't you? She opened her mouth, but I shook my head. Keep your apologies. I don't want your excuses or anything else from you too. I turned and walked away. Chloe's voice rang out behind me, Dad, please. I didn't pause, didn't glance back. I wasn't her father anymore, and she wasn't my daughter. Reflection. I thought walking away from them would feel like liberation, but freedom isn't that simple. What do you do when the people you loved most become the ones who tore you apart? How do you rebuild when the past sticks to you like a wound that won't heal? I didn't have answers, but one thing was certain, I wasn't going to spend another moment dwelling on them. When I left Sarah and Chloe behind outside that prison, I thought it'd be the end, that I could step into a new life like a man crawling from a fire, scarred but unbound. I was mistaken. Freedom isn't peace. It's just the absence of shackles. The ghosts, the rage, the memories, they don't vanish when the cell door swings open. For the first time in 17 years, I had to figure out who I was without their betrayal weighing me down. No place to call home, no one left to reach out to. The bus ride away from Oakridge felt like a dream I couldn't wake from. For 17 years, my reality was icy concrete walls, the constant yells of inmates, and the unshakable truth that I didn't belong in that hellhole. Now, I was just some guy slouched in the back of a bus, clutching a flimsy plastic bag with the few possessions the state deemed mine. No house, no career, no family, no clear path ahead. Just freedom. And it left a sour taste in my mouth. I dialed up the only people who might still give a damn. My old buddy, Ryan, straight to voicemail. My brother, Nathan, number disconnected. I wasn't shocked. 17 years is a lifetime to be left behind, but that didn't dull the sting of being forgotten. A gig no one else would touch. My first few days were spent in a halfway house, a place reeking of despair, filled with ex-cons who barely spoke, some jittery like they were still bracing for a fight. I didn't fit there, but then again, I didn't fit anywhere. The real struggle came next, finding a job. I tried it all, construction, but they called it too risky, factory jobs, where my record got me laughed out the door, even the local grocery store turned me away. Nobody wants to hire a guy who spent nearly 2 decades locked up, no matter what the papers say about a wrongful conviction. Then, I caught a break, or as close to one as someone like me could get. A farm in Willow Creek County needed a worker. The owner, Mr. Harrison, was pushing 70, a gruff type who didn't pry. He sized me up, noting the scars on my hands, the tension in my frame, and said, "You put in the effort, I don't care about your history. Deal?" I gave a quick nod. Work was work, and I needed something to keep my mind from spiraling. Grueling work, honest work. Those first weeks were punishing. I wasn't prepared for the bone-deep fatigue of hauling supplies, digging trenches, lugging feed, and patching up rickety fences. By sundown, my body screamed in ways I didn't know it could. But I didn't complain. For the first time in 17 years, I wasn't under the watchful eyes of guards or the threat of inmates ready to strike. It was just wide-open fields, clean air, and a kind of tiredness that felt purposeful. That was enough to keep me going, at least for a bit. Meeting Abigail *, I kept to myself at first, focused on the job, didn't ask for handouts, didn't expect warmth. Then I met her, Abigail Harrison, Mr. Harrison's daughter. She was nothing like Sarah, no pretense, no icy distance, just authentic. She had a quick wit, a no BS attitude, and eyes that seemed to read me like an open book from the moment we crossed paths. "You the new guy?" she asked one afternoon, brushing sweat from her forehead. The one with the rap sheet? I tensed up. That's me. She gave me a once-over, then shrugged. You know your way around machines? Yeah. Great. Tractor's shot. Come give me a hand. And with that, she turned and walked off. No judgment, no forced pleasantries, just straight to the point. I respected that. Building their respect ** Abigail didn't coddle me. She didn't dig into my past or treat me like I was damaged goods. If I screwed up, she called it out. If I nailed a task, she'd give a nod and a gruff, not half bad. It was the most dignity I'd felt in 17 years. Slowly, I started to feel like a person again, began to believe I might still have something worth building. Sarah's legal ambush *, then came the letter, a thick envelope with my name scrawled in bold ink. From Sarah. I stared at it for ages before tearing it open, reading the words once, then again. I let out a hollow, bitter laugh. She wasn't reaching out with apologies or pleas for forgiveness, she was suing me for child support. Child support. For the 17 years I spent caged because of her. She had the nerve to demand I pay her, as if I owed her anything after she'd stripped me of everything. The rage that surged back *, I sat there, eyes locked on the documents, a fury bubbling up like the night they sentenced me. 17 years of rotting in a cell, beaten down, humiliated, broken. 17 years of them living their cozy lives while I scratched days into my cell wall. And now they wanted more. They wanted to take even more from me. My fists clenched tight. I wanted to storm to whatever house Sarah called home and tear it apart, make her feel the kind of pain she'd inflicted. But then a voice cut through. Abigail. She stood in the doorway, watching me with quiet concern. You all right? I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. I need a lawyer. She raised an eyebrow, then, to my surprise, nodded. I know someone who can help. Reflection *, I thought I'd broken free, that I'd finally left them behind. But Sarah and Chloe weren't done with me. They weren't going to let me walk away so easily. This fight wasn't over, but this time, I wasn't going to let them win. I sat in my attorney's office, staring at the papers strewn across the desk. Sarah was suing me for child support. After 17 years in prison for a crime I didn't commit, she had the gall to demand money. It was almost comical, if it weren't so infuriating. She actually believes she can get away with this? I asked, gripping the desk to steady my trembling hands. My lawyer, Thomas Reed, leaned back, skimming the documents with a calm expression. Oh, she's not just hoping to pull it off, he said with a slight grin. She's banking on the system being as unfair as it was 17 years ago. The battle begins *, I should have seen it coming. Sarah wasn't content with stealing my life, my freedom, my self-respect. She wanted to drain me dry. And Chloe? She was right there with her. Sure, she'd taken back her testimony, but that didn't make her blameless. If she truly felt remorse, she wouldn't have let her mother haul me back into court. But she did, and that meant she wasn't getting a pass either. Confronting my past again *, the courthouse hadn't changed, same stale smell of old documents, sweat, and shattered dreams. I'd walked into this place once before, back when I still believed truth could shield me. Now, I stepped in wiser, hardened. Sarah and Chloe were already there, seated together at the plaintiff's table. Sarah was dressed like she was playing a part, black dress, pearl earrings, the picture of a wronged woman. Chloe, though, looked drained, her eyes sunken, hands restless in her lap. Good. She deserved to feel the weight of what she'd done to me. Thomas nudged my arm. Stay calm, he whispered. No outbursts. We're going for precise, calculated devastation. I took a deep breath and nodded. I was ready. Sarah's move *, the judge, a new one, thankfully, called the session to order. Sarah's lawyer, a cocky guy in a slick suit who acted like victory was assured, stood first. Your Honor, My client raised a child alone for 17 years because Mr. Bennett neglected his duties as a father. It's only just that he now pay for those years of hardship. Pay? I nearly scoffed. I balled my fists under the table, keeping my face neutral. Sarah glanced at me, a faint smile on her lips, like she still thought she held power over me, like I was still the broken man she'd crushed years ago. I stayed still, letting her savor her moment. Her reckoning was coming. The counterattack * Thomas rose, and when he spoke, he didn't just defend, he dismantled. Your Honor, he started, flipping through his notes, it's curious that Ms. Bennett is now seeking payment for the burden of raising her child when he shot Sarah a pointed smirk, is the very reason my client was locked away in the first place. The courtroom went quiet. Sarah tensed, but her lawyer jumped in. That's beside the point, he countered. The court already addressed Mr. Bennett's wrongful conviction. It doesn't absolve him of his obligations. Thomas let out a slow sigh, shaking his head. Oh, it absolutely does, Your Honor, he said smoothly. If we're discussing responsibility, let's talk about the real damage here. He glanced at me, then back to the judge. My client lost 17 years of his life because of these two, he said, gesturing toward Sarah and Chloe. 17 years where he couldn't earn a living, couldn't provide, couldn't even defend himself. And now they want to bill him for their crime against him. A low murmur spread through the room. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Reed, are you suggesting a countersuit for damages? Thomas didn't flinch. Absolutely, Your Honor. My client is seeking compensation for emotional, financial, and punitive damages due to the wrongful conviction and slander that destroyed his life. Sarah's facade cracks * the second Thomas said it, Sarah's composure faltered. She turned to her lawyer, panic in her eyes. Chloe's lip quivered. This wasn't the script they'd planned. They thought they could waltz in, flash some documents, score a quick payout, and leave unscathed. But now, they were the ones under fire. The judge leaned back, pondering. Given the situation, he said deliberately, I find it reasonable to allow this countersuit to move forward. Sarah's face went pale. I saw it, the exact moment she realized she'd lost. Chloe's outburst * before Sarah's lawyer could object, Chloe did something unexpected. She shot to her feet in the middle of the courtroom and faced the judge. I don't want his money, she blurted out. Sarah's head whipped toward her. Chloe's hands shook as she looked at me. I don't want anything from him, she repeated. Her voice broke. I just want to fix this. The room fell silent. Even Sarah was stunned. Chloe turned to me fully. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I know it's not enough. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I don't want to cause you more pain. Her words should have hit me, should have stirred something. Maybe 17 years ago, they would have. But now? I felt nothing but a hollow void. The judge let out a sigh. Based on Ms. Bennett's statement, I'm dismissing the plaintiff's claim for child support. The gavel cracked down. I'd won. But victory didn't feel like I'd imagined, not when Sarah sputtered in disbelief, not when Chloe's tears fell. Because no court win could ever give me back what I'd lost. The decisive strike * the judge approved my restraining order against both of them. I'd never have to see their faces, hear their voices, or be pulled back into their twisted schemes again. Sarah stormed out first, seething with rage. Chloe lingered, turning to me one last time, her eyes begging. Dad, she whispered, please. I shook my head. She wasn't my daughter anymore, and I wasn't her father. I walked out, and this time, I didn't look back. Reflection * Sarah thought she could drag me back under her thumb, that I was still the shattered man she'd broken all those years ago. She was wrong. I was finished with her. As I stepped out of that courthouse, into the life I'd clawed back with my own hands, I knew this was the true triumph. Leaving that courthouse should have felt like turning the last page of a long, painful book, but it didn't. Freedom's not the same as peace. I'd won, thwarted Sarah's schemes, witnessed Chloe's remorse up close, and reclaimed the reins of my life. Still, as I stepped onto the pavement, the courtroom's weight lifting, I didn't feel like a guy striding toward a new horizon. I felt like someone hauling a heavy past behind him. 17 years of betrayal don't vanish in a day, and no court win could erase the fact that I'd spent nearly 2 decades locked away for nothing. Returning to the farm after the hearing, I didn't head to a bar to toast my victory or hole up in some dingy motel to brood. I drove straight back to the farm, to Abigail and Mr. Harrison. They'd given me a shot when the world turned its back, and though I never said it out loud, I owed them more than I could ever repay. As I rolled into the driveway, Abigail was there on the porch, leaning against the rail, arms folded, watching me like she'd known I'd show up. "So?" she asked, her tone steady. I didn't reply right away. I stood there, taking in the sprawling fields behind her, the distant barn, the sky that seemed vast after years of confinement. Finally, I let out a breath. "It's done." She gave a small nod, like she'd already figured as much. "All right then." That was it before she pushed off the rail and headed inside. No fuss, no fake cheers, no pity. I valued that more than words could express. Pushing forward, trying to let go. 4 weeks after, I buried myself in work, up at dawn, mending fences, helping Mr. Harrison with the animals. By nightfall, I was so worn out I could barely think, which was the goal. When I wasn't working, my mind wandered to places I wanted to avoid: Sarah's smug courtroom grin, Chloe's tearful pleas for forgiveness, the musty scent of prison walls, the bite of cold handcuffs on my wrists. No matter how hard I tried to shake the past, it stuck to me like a wound that wouldn't close. The nightmares that lingered. The first time Abigail saw me jolt awake, drenched in sweat, she didn't cry. I'd been staying in a small cabin on the edge of the farm, separate from the main house. That night, I shot up, gasping, heart racing, my body slick with perspiration. The prison dreams were always the same: icy concrete floors, far-off screams, the thud of fists against my ribs, raw fear. I stumbled outside, trying to steady my breathing. That's when I spotted her, Abigail, on the main house porch, cradling a coffee mug. She didn't ask what was wrong or try to patch me up. She just held up the mug. "Want some?" I paused, then nodded. I climbed the porch steps, sat beside her, and took the cup she offered. We sat in silence, but it wasn't awkward. It was comforting. She got it, maybe not the whole story, but enough to know what it's like to carry scars that don't heal. That was all I needed. Chloe reaches out again. One evening, after a grueling day in the fields, a letter arrived. I knew it was from Chloe before I even touched it. My name was scrawled in her shaky handwriting on the envelope. I almost tossed it, but something held me back. Instead, I sat on the porch, watching the sun sink behind the hills, and made myself read it. Dad, I know I've got no right to ask you for anything. Forgiveness isn't something I deserve. But I want you to hear me, not as the kid who lied about you, not as the daughter who turned her back on you, but as the woman who finally sees what she did. I trusted Mom because I thought she was keeping me safe. I was a naive teenager, and I let her feed me lies that tore us apart. I don't expect you to let me back in, but I need you to know I love you. I hate myself for what I've done. If you ever want to talk, to hear me out, I'll be here, waiting. Always. Chloe. Choosing closure over vengeance. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the letter. I didn't feel anger or sorrow, just a deep emptiness. Even if she meant every word, even if she'd seen the truth, it changed nothing. It didn't erase the 17 years I'd lost, the torment I'd endured, or the fact that I no longer saw her as my daughter. Abigail stepped onto the porch, saw the letter in my hands, and stayed quiet, just waiting. I let out a slow breath, folded the paper, and pulled the lighter from my pocket. Without hesitation, I sparked it and set the letter ablaze. The edges curled, blackened, crumbled to ash. As I watched it burn, the weight of it dissolved, and when the last spark died, I felt a little lighter. Reflection asterisk they thought I'd come back, slip into the role of the father they'd cast aside, the man they'd broken and now wanted to reclaim. But that man was gone, killed off in prison. This new me wasn't dwelling on what was. He was forging ahead, without them. For the first time in ages, that felt like true freedom. Burning Chloe's letter felt like torching something insignificant, like her words held no weight. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the case. It wasn't about spite or hatred, it was about release. For the first time in 17 years, I was free, not just from cell bars but from the shackles of my past. Now, I had to figure out who I was without them. Letting go of what was asterisk one morning, while I was repairing a barn fence, Mr. Harrison ambled over. He leaned against a post, watching me drive a nail into the wood. "You've changed," he said after a pause. I glanced over. "How's that?" He scratched his beard thoughtfully. "When you first showed up, you were carrying your past like a heavy pack. Now, it's like you finally set it down." I exhaled slowly. He might have been onto something. The anger, the bitterness, the urge to prove myself, it wasn't raging like before. That shift meant something. "Could be," I said quietly. He nodded, a glint of understanding in his eyes. "Good. Maybe now you can start looking ahead instead of back." His words landed harder than I expected. For the first time in years, I realized I had a future, one that didn't include Sarah or Chloe. It was time to start building it. Realizing I wanted more asterisk that evening, as I sat outside watching the sunset, Abigail joined me. She didn't speak at first, just settled beside me, sipping her coffee as usual. After a long quiet, she broke the silence. "So, what's next for you?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" She turned, locking eyes with me. "You beat the case. You got your freedom. You settled the score. But what do you really want now?" I didn't have an answer. For so long, survival was my only focus. I hadn't thought about what came next. But looking at Abigail, at the way her gaze held no judgment, just quiet support, it hit me. I wanted more than just getting by, more than a life fueled by resentment. I wanted something real. I wanted to truly live again. Starting my own venture asterisk a few weeks later, I made a choice. I headed to town, pulled out every dollar from the settlement I got for my wrongful conviction, and poured it into something that felt like mine, a modest construction business. Nothing grand, just honest labor, building things, creating, starting fresh. Mr. Harrison let me lease a small office space in town, and soon enough, I landed my first contract. For the first time since before the trial, I felt like myself again, not a convict, not a victim, not a name tied to a fabricated crime. Just a man, piecing his life back together, one project at a time. Abigail and me asterisk it wasn't something I saw coming, wasn't even something I thought I deserved. But somewhere between late-night coffee chats and working shoulder to shoulder on the farm, I realized Abigail had become my anchor. She was tough, straightforward, didn't put up with my nonsense, and somehow, she never saw me as damaged. One night, after we finished patching up an old barn, I blurted it out. "I think I'm in love with you." She let out a snort. "About damn time you figured it out." Then she kissed me. It wasn't some big, cinematic moment, just simple, honest, perfect. For the first time in decades, I felt at peace. The letter I kept asterisk months went by. The business was thriving. Life was good. I'd stopped thinking about Sarah or Chloe. Then another letter came from Chloe. I nearly burned it like the last one, but something made me pause. This time, I opened it. Asterisk Dad, I won't beg for forgiveness again, I know I've lost that right. I just wanted you to know I've left Mom. I finally saw her for who she is, and I see the pain I caused you. I don't expect you to welcome me back. I just needed you to know I understand the truth now. I hope you're happy. That's all I wish for you. Chloe, asterisk. The choice I made asterisk. I read that letter 3 times, and for the first time in 17 years, I felt something other than anger when I thought of Chloe. I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't trust her, didn't forgive her, but the hatred was gone. That was a step forward. Still, I knew one thing for certain, I wasn't going back. I wouldn't reach out or try to rebuild what was broken beyond repair. Some things are better left behind. Reflection asterisk. I'd started fresh. I found peace, love, a future worth building. Sarah was nothing to me now. Chloe was just a fading echo of a life I once knew. I won't waste another moment on them. I've got a new life now, one that's mine, and for the first time in forever, I'm truly free. That's all for today's tale on Top Stories Hub. Hit subscribe, leave a comment, and tell me what you'd like to see next.